Welcome to the Danny Clinkscale Reasonably Irreverent podcast. Insightful and witty commentary, probing interviews, and detours from the beaten path.
Welcome to Arts and Lifestyle Wednesday, presented by Cinematic Visions. Well, I've said it before, and I'm saying it again this time. I enjoy all the things that I do at DannyClinkscale.com, even if it's a serious blog about the times we're in now, or talking about personalities, or talking about just games, if we ever get back to that. But there is no more fun that I have on every other Wednesday than talking about music with Tim Finn on Danny and Tim's Music Scene, and we are about to get at it again. And usually I tape these introductions after I do the rest of it, so I know what happened, and what happened this time around is more good fun as we talk about great music, great things we can recommend, bad shows from the past, which is part of an article that was printed a few weeks ago that we haven't discussed yet at In Kansas City Magazine. It's a great read, and we always sort of like the morbid curiosity of things that don't go so well, but we have a lot of great things that are going so well as far as things you can consume, and our music discussions always range far and wide, and it's always just a blast, and it's a lot of laughs, and it's a lot of fun, and you will get a big dose of it over the next 35 minutes or so. So enjoy, and we'll get after it next on Danny and Tim's Music Scene right here. Cinematic Visions has been an affordable solution for professional media production in Kansas City since 2003, offering award-winning video production and creation, as well as a wide array of digital and social media management services. From planning, scripting, filming, editing, and post-production, to delivering your product to a watching world, Cinematic Visions will provide professional and affordable services for you and your business with the necessary return on investment to make it all worthwhile. Cinematic Visions' goal is to unlock the power of storytelling through video and a strong online presence for your company. Beyond the numbers, they want to inspire and evoke your clients to feel and act. Let my friends at Cinematic Visions embed your brand where it belongs, in your customers' minds. You can find them online at cinematicvisions.com or with a quick phone call at 816-600-6300.
Hi, this is Matt Llewellyn from 23rd Street Brewery. Thank you, Kansas City, for supporting all the local restaurants during this time of crisis. Starting Thursday, May 21st, the 23rd Street Brewery will be open from 11 to 9 for carry-out and delivery service, and 4 to 9 for dine-in and patio service, if you can believe that. We're open. During this phase, we will adhere to the Douglas County recommendations for restaurants, and please see our website or our Facebook page for details. Most importantly, we want all of our guests and staff to stay safe, and together, we will all get through this.
My friends at Advanced Sports and Family Chiropractic and Acupuncture are among the most accomplished and trusted clinics in the nation. Only one clinic has been rated in the top 5 in all 3 categories of chiropractic care, acupuncture, and rehabilitation, and that clinic is ASFCA. They have locations in Olathe, Overland Park, Prairie Village, Belton, and Lee Summit. Doctors Brad and Christina Woodle and their accomplished team of doctors and therapists will treat you like family, for the simplest of injuries to the most complicated conditions to avoid surgery. Whether you are seeking treatment for an injury or just looking to stay healthy and fit, this is the place for you. And it's been the place for me for almost 2 years now. I've been a strenuous daily exerciser for years, and as time goes on, that takes its toll. But regular appointments at Advanced Sports and Family Chiropractic and Acupuncture have helped keep me ticking on, and even as the years pile up, their regular care has allowed me to keep to my regimen and feel great. If you want to feel the same, give them a call or visit them at asfca.com/Danny. They accept all insurances and are open Monday through Saturday, and make sure to mention that Danny Clinkscale recommended Advanced Sports and Family Chiropractic and Acupuncture.
If you'd like to join these and other great sponsors and market your business to a growing and engaged audience, contact us at danny@dannyclinkscale.com. Look forward to hearing from you.
Tim, we're another 2 weeks down the road, and we still are just creeping along towards music normalcy, but I guess the warm weather and the outdoors and everything else lends itself to maybe picking up a little momentum. What's your general sense of the music scene right now in general?
I don't feel or sense much of a difference, frankly. I know we're getting to the point where it's up to businesses, I guess, to decide whether or when they want to open. I haven't really heard much on that front, but I know Knuckleheads is still going forward kind of slowly and deliberately, having a lot of free open jams and Frank is announcing some shows, to be, we hope, presented in July, August, September, and who knows what the restrictions will be. That you would expect them to be lighter than they are now, like more than 10% of capacity. So, but we'll just have to wait as that unfolds, and it's doing so really carefully. And who knows whether there's going to be after Memorial Day weekend and all the protests. It seems likely that there's going to be a surge of some sort in cases. So we'll have to see how everybody deals with that. I'm kind of not thinking about it much,
Right.
I remain optimistic that I will be going to shows sometime this year, but I'm not gonna pinpoint a day and expect to be, I don't expect to be at Starlight or Sprint Center this year for sure. Be uptown in Midland maybe, but we'll see.
Yeah, we'll see, and it almost seems like maybe shows that wouldn't necessarily draw the greatest crowds would be the ones that would open up. But musicians still do music no matter what, and my wife's an opera singer, and she sings every day. People who love music just love it, no matter whether they can go out and have it in front of an audience or not. And you always do great work with your behind the music. And Bo Bledsoe is a guy who plays in a couple of bands, and obviously that is restricted as far as what the audience can see. But really a nice piece about a guy who started out sort of in traditional rock and roll fashion and has branched out in his music career so adroitly and interestingly, and now includes his son in his playing as well.
Yeah, he's one of the most diverse musicians I've ever met. I used to watch him. There was a restaurant on Southwest Boulevard called Shiraz, and he used to play there and just play a couple of styles of guitar, flamenco. He had Spanish guitar, and he got into like tango. He's in an ensemble called Tango Lorca. He's now in one called Ensemble Iberica, which explores the music of southern Spain and Portugal. It's an amazing ensemble. It's got 6 or 7 people and a vocalist who's just outstanding. And it's interesting to watch that because most of us don't speak the language, so you're not paying attention as much to the lyrics as you are to the vocal prowess and watching the instrumentation. And it's a different listening experience, but I recommend it once they get up and rolling again. They used to host a pretty regular, monthly show, and that's one of the first things I want to go back to when live music starts up again. But Bo, he grew up in rural Arkansas, was exposed to a lot of traditional country music, and got into rock and roll, and then heard Andres Segovia, and that sort of started him on his way to explore world music and various guitars, and I don't think there's a string instrument he can't play, and if there is one, he'll find out about it and figure out how to play it. He's just that curious and that adept at it. Just a brilliant guitarist, and it's really funny to see him in this band, Some Hanson and the Poor Choices, because that's just real traditional, raw honky tonk, and he plays an electric guitar, and it's so different from what he does otherwise.
It is interesting, and music is generational, and maybe more so now when people are at home and things like that. And he's joined with his son to do some playing too. And you included his son as well in the piece and the interviews, which are always so well done. And I think that's a thing that probably even more now is being shared because people aren't maybe performing before audiences a lot, and maybe passing on that generational thing of music.
Mm-hmm. Right, and I think what he's managed to do is, I know my 2 daughters, we had them piano lessons. They were in orchestra in middle school and into high school, but they eventually got out of it because we were kind of forcing them to do it. So once they were able to stop, they did. But he's managed to pass it down and keep his son and now his daughter interested in it and make it interesting and make it something that they want to do every day, even though it is mandatory for them. Kind of, he's like, there's no way we wouldn't. Music is it's a staple of our life, but he's to nurture it in a way that, at least for now, his son, it's just an integral part of his life. So I didn't ask him, well, would you encourage him to be a musician, especially now when no one's working? But I think his point was, if he doesn't want to do it, that's fine, but he's going to do it now, and then see where it takes him.
And I think a lot of times in the end, people will, maybe who even resist a little bit when they're younger, will be thankful a little bit later on. Also, you're involved with the Bridges having a 90s week, and I think nostalgia and visits to at times like that are really cool. But and you're going to do a Q&A involved with that. Talk about the Bridges 90s week and the focus also on not just artists, famous ones, but also the local scene, which the Bridge does such a great job of.
Right. If you go to their website, 90.9thebridge.org, I think that's what it is. There's a nice menu of what this week is offering, and part of it is one of the videographers and producers over at KCPT used to host a music show, and he's got all footage from those shows that I think are available on the website and even on YouTube. But so it goes way back to the early 90s, and some of what were seminal Kansas City bands like Season to Risk and Molly McGuire and Giant's Chair. And Kansas City developed kind of its own sound. This is when grunge was flourishing. But the sound here didn't really mimic grunge. Maybe it did a little. It was sort of a more, it was like punk and metal or post-punk. It was rock. And it really, I think, unbeknownst to a lot of people around here, people outside heard it and sort of coined it, the Kansas City sound. You ask somebody who was in bands back then what that sound is, define that sound, and they can't. They're like, I don't know, it's just what we were doing. But so these videos will explore that kind of music. There's a piece up right now, an interview with Steve Tulipana, who owns a record bar and is in several bands now, but was in Season to Risk, which was a prominent band in Kansas City. They got on a national label. They were kind of an underground band, but they were a prominent underground band, if there's such a thing. And so he talks about those days. My interview, is with so in the mid-90s, this kind of other generations of band or younger bands started. One of them was a band called Frog Pond. They came out of Warrensburg. Heidi Phillips was the lead singer and the chief songwriter of that band. It was 4 women, so they were sort of a novelty, but they turned out to be a really good band. She writes great songs. Art Olentzakis of Everclear produced their first record. They got a pretty prominent article in Musician magazine, which was something I read every month. I think it came out. So they got some attention, and I think REM asked them to be the band at their end of tour after party, back in 94 or 5. Anyway, so I talked to Heidi about those days, and I also talked to Matt Pryor, who's with a band called the Get Up Kids. If you haven't heard them, especially their new record, which just came out last year, called Problems. It is, we both like that really crunchy, poppy, hard edge rock music, and that new record is like that. And so they've been around for, 25 years. So we talked to Matt because he was younger coming up. He was a teenager, and he talks about playing a show at Davies Uptown, and he had to wait in the parking lot. He could come in when his set started and had to leave after because he was underage. And he talks about that. Yeah, just the environment. They both signed with labels. They talk about that. Talk about what it was like to be from here, to make some waves outside of here, and what that was like. Because, and I remember this, there could be some backlash, resentment from here when bands went off and got famous elsewhere, and they sort of addressed that. But yeah, it's that'll be up on their website tomorrow, Thursday.
Great.
And so check it out. And there's all kinds of other stuff on there, and I haven't seen this yet, but they're also they're playing a lot of 90s music on the air, so tune into that. It's a strange thing because the 90s, by the time by January of 92, I was married and had a child. So music, I didn't explore music like I had done. So for the first 3 or 4 years, I was sort of a distant observer. I was listening more to the stuff I already had, although I got into Uncle Tupelo in the 90s, and I got into Radiohead in the 90s. So certainly there were bands that meant a lot to me. I think I was probably more of an 80s guy. I think a decade was my favorite. It would probably be the 80s, but it's interesting to go back and remember some of the music that really resonated with fans and also with these musicians, because Matt Pryor just said it's not even fair to ask me what to rank favorite decades, because the 90s was everything to me. It's when I became a music fan. It was when I became a musician, and I rode around in a band, so it's not even close. And it was just interesting to get that perspective.
Any decade that you favor, when you go back and say there's a channel devoted to it or something, and I think maybe for the 80s it's even more so. No, not really, because there's crap in the 70s, there's crap in the 80s, but when you go back and hear a lot of the hit songs of the 80s, you're like, geez, I remember that there was so much good music, and I've listened to this station now for 45 minutes and I haven't heard a goddamn thing. so I mean, I think each decade really has that combination of things.
Well, it depends on where you're looking too, because I'm not a top 40 radio fan, so I was listening to college radio and alternative radio. So if I look at Billboard charts from 80s or the 90s, a lot of it is stuff if I recognize it, I didn't own it, and only because I heard it a few times or it was forced upon me. But I think you can pick either decade. A lot of great bands came out of the 90s, absolutely. Nine Inch Nails, Nirvana, all the grunge bands, Smashing Pumpkins. Anyway, it was definitely a formative and influential decade.
No question about that. Let's take a turn, and it's always you were charged with doing a story about your 5 worst concerts, and you didn't really approach it in exactly that way on our last thing. We talked about it, but we didn't want to spoil alert. It's always kind of fun to run down those things, and I said before we were talking before we went on, and somehow there's sort of some absurd fascination sometimes with what isn't great. We love what is great, but there is some fascination with what isn't great. And you've talked many times on this piece about the fact that even if something isn't your cup of tea or in your wheelhouse, almost, you have a very positive outlook about going to shows and seeing shows, because generally the people there are happy to go and see a good show. But this is kind of a rundown of things for these 5 that are affected not only by the people themselves, but in this case of the first one you point out, a 2001 show by Matchbox 20 and Train, the circumstances surrounding it.
Yes, that was dreadful. And I felt more than anything disappointed and kind of offended that the show went on. It was the Sunday after 9/11. As I point out, there was, we've been watching TV nonstop for 5 or 6 days. So NFL games, they canceled Major League Baseball or postponed them. And it was just not a shred of me that wanted to drive out to Sandstorm and hang out with 11,000 other people to listen to 2 bands that I really didn't care about. But my objection wasn't to their music, because their music's fine. It's easy to like. It's very mainstream. But it was just a sense of denial, and people, the kind of excuse was, well, people need a break, and we don't want the terrorists to win, or something ridiculous like that. It's like, that has nothing to do with it. There are still bodies being, exhumed from. And then so it was really difficult, and it was hard to write about it. But I managed to. I couldn't dig up the review from the article. I got in a review of the show, but just said this, in the end, this shouldn't have happened, and maybe we'll learn from it next time.
Then a 2009 show, Ryan Adams and the Cardinals. And Ryan Adams, as you write in here, has a reputation for sometimes being outstanding and pleasing his fans, and sometimes being a virtual no-show. And I guess this fell into the latter category.
Yeah, he's so temperamental and petulant, and you just never know what you're going to get with him. And I don't know how many times I'd seen him. I think the first time I saw him, he was with his band he started from North Carolina called Whiskey Town. I love their music. Very alt country, very kind of Graham Parsons, Flying Burrito Brothers, that kind of music. He wrote great songs. But he was at South by Southwest and was barely in condition to perform, but did so anyway. The show was chaotic and kind of a mess. So that wasn't impressive. I saw him again, I think it was that year. It was a year later, where he came on stage with one of my heroes, Alejandro, a great songwriter. And he sort of guested on a couple of his songs. And when he wasn't singing, he stood off to the side, but was very conspicuous and was just being a jerk, you know? So my impression of him wasn't good. And then I saw him solo a few times, and it seemed like every time he would interrupt the show and berate a fan or just go off on some weird jag, some weird monologue, and people would yell, "Come on, sing a song," you know, that would irritate him more. So, yeah, this show, he was in darkness. He told some long joke about pins and banks or something, and then out of nowhere had a 20-minute intermission after he'd only played for like 25 minutes. So it was just irritating. It got more irritating, and then he ended the show pretty abruptly. So I just said, I'm never going to see him again, and I didn't. I skipped him for a few times. But then the last time I saw him was as humble and contrite as he could possibly be, and it was a very good show. He only got upset once when someone took a picture with a flash, but he settled it pretty quickly. Since then, I mean, if you Google him, he's been in a hot mess. A lot of women he's worked with have come out and said he was very verbally and psychologically abusive to them. So he's kind of disappeared for a while, and we'll see if he can come back. I don't know. A lot of his fans really resent him. Did before this happened, and do so even more now.
Yeah, and somebody else who has somewhat of that reputation, and we watched the documentary "Don't Look Back" recently of Bob Dylan, and that's fascinating. And I was struck eventually by the fact that people want to become famous, and then when they do, they don't like it. Now, sort of, Bob Dylan reached a level of fame that most people don't, where they're actually being told that they're the voice of a generation, etc. But from a music standpoint, Bob Dylan's always been, in his older times, a performer who one time you could go and see him and you say, well, that was fantastic. And then the next time, walk out of the theater. And in 2006, that was one of those, I guess. Oh, yeah. People, like I pointed out in this piece, that the people sitting next to me were really excited about seeing him for the first time. And I didn't puncture their bubble. I said, well, we'll see. We'll see, because I'd seen him like the year or so before. That's when I took my wife at the time. She's still seeing him for the first time, and after like 3 songs, she was like, "Can we leave?" Willie Nelson opened for him that night. The first 2 parts of the show were great, and then Dylan just came out and just kind of slaughtered the songs for 90 minutes, and it was not satisfying. This night, the one at the Midland that I wrote about, I think was even worse. I thought about reviewing both shows, because he did 2 shows in 2 nights, but I just went back to the paper and said, I'm not going back to that. Once is enough. And Merle Haggard opened for him that night. Merle was always just a great, very friendly performer, very folksy, played all the songs you wanted to hear, played them like you heard them, remembered them. Dylan, this night, just deconstructed his songs to the point where you weren't recognizing them by melody, it was by lyrics, if you could discern the lyrics, and you couldn't always do that. So it's hard not to resent him for that. Like, we pay money, good money, to come see you, and look what you did to us. It was beyond frustrating. I've seen him 3 times. One was middling, one was awful, and then one Mark Knopfler opened for him in Omaha, and that was below average. So, so I guess I've had 3 incidents of that. But go ahead.
Oh, I saw him once in 2001, and it was the perfect Dylan show. It was absolutely perfect. It was at the Uptown, and he was altering his songs, but not profoundly. So you recognize the song right away by the guitarist. He also had the best band he's ever had at that time, including Larry Campbell and Charlie Sexton were part of it. I saw him at Sandstone. He actually opened the show, though he was a headliner. Bob Weir, I think it was Bob Weir, was played after him. But that was a great show, too. So I've seen him a couple of times. He also, coincidentally, in 2008, I saw him at the Uptown again, and that was a B- C+ show, but it was the night, coincidentally, that Barack Obama was accepting a nomination for president, so there was just this great buzz in the air, and he never mentioned it. He never acknowledged what was happening that night, which was historic, which was a little disappointing, but I think the fact that was happening that night and people were running into the lounge at the Uptown where there was a TV and skipping parts of Dylan to watch parts of the speech. So, but that was a memorable night for two reasons. But probably my third favorite Dylan show.
And the most recent one you talk about is R. Kelly, who obviously has had a wildly disgusting, really, reputation personally, but still was a big-time performer. And that night, the crowd was excited to see him, and you weren't. But and in retrospect, you still aren't.
No, and I heard all the stories were out there, but this was before, like within the last year and a half or so, the documentary that came out and just details about who he is and what he did. There's no way I would go see him now. I mean, he's probably never going to tour again, but a good friend of mine, she was a huge fan, but she did not go to that show that night. She said, no, there's no way. I don't want to be seen in the same room as him. And I was having second thoughts about it, but I went anyway. Now I wish I hadn't.
And finally, a show that you can almost sense going in wasn't going to be so great was Vince Neil at Ameristar Casino, because he had just played at Sprint Center with Motley Crue, and now he's going out on his own and on what looks kind of like a cash grab on a solo tour, and he's playing at a casino, and the picture says enough to me. An old bloated rock and roller that looks like he should not be doing this anymore. So I don't even know if I had to be there to sense that one.
Right. It was. He was not feeling it that night, and he made sure everyone knew it. I don't. He only played for like an hour or something, and I think he was off stage for one of his classic rock medleys that his band did, and it was like. It was kind of like there were only like 250 people in that big room, and people got there and were kind of smiling at each other like, what are we going to see here? And maybe a little bit of chagrin about why did I come here? What did I think I was going to see? But I think there was more bemusement than there was any resentment for how. I mean, when he cut the show short, it was an act of mercy. Like, thank you, no encore. Thank you for no encore. It was one to laugh about.
That's a good way to wrap up our first segment. We'll be back and talk more with Tim coming up as we are Arts and Lifestyle Wednesday presented by Cinematic Visions and Danny and Tim's music scene. Always a blast. More coming up next.
More of Danny's Reasonably Irreverent podcast after this.
I'm here with Tim Emerson, the owner of Emerson & Company. And Tim, give us an idea of the range of services that you provide from Emerson & Company.
At Emerson & Company, we do credit card processing, payroll services. We do bookkeeping, merchant accounts like point-of-sale systems.
What would you say differentiates you from other companies in the field, and what makes you special?
I think what makes us unique is that we're a small local business making regional decisions on companies. We create a profile for the business and then put it out to our different vendors in a very competitive environment and tailor those needs to the specific business, which usually ends up in a great fit or great result for the company.
And, of course, the idea is to save money, right?
Save money, and actually sometimes I'm surprised where actually a solution that may cost a little bit more ultimately does save money, but we're not conditioned to think like that sometimes.
Emerson & Company. Check them out at emerson-co.com or call them at 816-360-9092.
For many people, A family law case will be one of the most difficult experiences in their life. The law firm of Kenneth McRae will help you through it. Personal and effective help from Ken in concert with you will develop a unique strategy for your unique case. As Ken always says, divorce can be civil law, not civil war. Licensed in Kansas? Visit McRaeLawOffice.com or call 913-972-4765.
We're here with Joe Spiker, the CEO and president of Easton Roofing. And Joe, you had a great year in 2019, a record year. 2020 comes, things are moving smoothly along, and then the coronavirus comes. But your company seemed to be very ready, very proactive, and very ready to serve your customers well.
Yeah, we adopted social distancing very early before the cities even put out the notices. And we started working from home. We are largely cloud-based as a company, so that transition was easy. Our technicians are wearing masks and gloves, and salespeople are not meeting with homeowners. We're doing everything digitally and doing everything we can to do our part to get over this as quickly as possible.
So for any needs that people have right now, what's the best way to get in touch with you?
Well, you can always call us, 913-257-5426. But the best way is to go to eastonroofing.com, put your information in, and we'll give you a call.
Easton Roofing. Integrity matters. We're visiting with Larry Marshall, former Chiefs defensive back and punt returner and now a Chiefs ambassador. Larry is a former pro football player with the aches and pains that come with that. And moving on in age, as we all are, what do the Canaway CBD products do for you?
It's been a great relief for me. Being a punt and kickoff returner, collisions were a mainstay of my career, and these Canaway products, the salve especially, has really helped me try to get through every day with the aches and pains that I've had over a career of 7+ years in the NFL.
I get similar benefits as well, particularly with my back. Certainly wasn't a football player. What's the best way for our listeners to get more information about the great products themselves?
Well, I'm so enthused about it, Dana. They just contacted me at larrymarshall.canaway.com, and I can give them all the information they need to help them get through the day as well.
Start gaining all the benefits that Larry and I do from the trusted and reliable line of Canaway products. As Larry said, visit larrymarshall.canaway.com and get information on all the great products from Canaway. If you'd like to join these and other great sponsors and market your business to a growing and engaged audience, contact us at Danny@DannyKlinkScale.com. Look forward to hearing from you. Back with Tim. Good laughs always to be had, and even a morbid gallows humor there at the end a little bit. Obviously, most of the music we consume now is in the form of documentaries and concerts from the past, and I got 3 highlights to run by you that just in the last few days my wife and I have watched, and 2 of them are just almost shocking to me. Brian Johnson, the lead singer for AC/DC, has done a little series called On the Road. It seems like it's very recent. I didn't see the copyright at the end. And the 2 we watched were a couple nights ago. We watched him with Mark Knopfler. Last night we watched him with Paul Rogers, who's obviously sung for a variety of bands, and is called by Brian Johnson The Voice. My wife's a big fan. He's a fantastic singer. But I wanted to start with Mark Knopfler because obviously I always want to start with Mark Knopfler. But Brian, these I can so highly recommend these if you see them on any platform. I didn't know anything about Brian Johnson except that most people I had heard liked him, and that he was, and him as the singer, and he walked into a very difficult situation, but for AC/DC, and handled it brilliantly. But he's just a delightful person on these things, and he brings out the joy of people. And in the first one, he and Mark Knopfler are both from Newcastle, and the guy just does an incredible job. These are heavily produced pieces, but he's the type of engaging personality who brings out the best in the people he's talking to.
Yeah, and I need to watch those. I see those. It's on INXS, right?
Yeah, they're on there.
Yeah, I see them every once in a while. And I never bother to stop there.
You know what? I totally am with you. I had seen them on more than one occasion, and only the fact that it was Mark Knopfler made me do it. And now I'll probably watch them all.
Right? Yeah, I'll go back and watch them. I think and I've said this before about people I've interviewed. Artists from the UK, from Britain, are almost unfailingly charming, polite, respectful. Like, I can't think of one British musician I've interviewed, and I'm Bowie, Jagger, Jeff Otto was Ian
Anderson, right?
Ian Anderson, yeah. just even Ray Davies was really kind. He didn't want to do the interview, but he didn't show it.
Right.
And I just think it's something about how they are raised, and they don't want to look bad, for one thing, but they don't. It's just not in their nature to be, belligerent or mean or crass. So I'm not surprised. But yeah, thanks for the recommendation. I'll have to check out some of those.
Yeah, if you have skipped over those, as I had often in the short time now that we have had Access TV, and like I said, we're DVRing madly because we think it's going to go away here sometime soon. But I can highly recommend the delightful personality of Brian Johnson, who actually apparently he's back singing, I guess, again. He apparently got some kind of treatment, and I guess he's going to sing some more. We'll see. And then last night, go ahead.
I know Mihar has a show on there too that I haven't checked out. I've got a slight aversion to him. I'm not sure why, but I don't know. I had a friend who spent a day with him. A guy.
Sorry, we dropped out a little bit there. What was the name again?
Sammy Hagar.
Oh, right. Yeah. He does have a show on there. Yeah, and I probably am not inclined to watch that one either.
But a buddy I know who spent time with him at South by, a friend who writes for USA Today, said he was really great to be with and was real friendly. So I might check out one of those. But I don't know. I did an interview with him once, and he was fine. But I don't know. I just have this inexplicable aversion to him for some reason.
Well, that happens sometimes. That's for sure. And then last night, really an incredible highlight to me was I'd never seen the INXS concert film Live Baby Live. And I don't know if I've ever seen a show where the band seemed to be having more fun than this particular show. Have you seen this?
No, but I got to find it. What year was that from?
It's 2001, I believe. So let's.
So it was after Hutchins died, Michael Hutchins.
No,
died.
It was. I'm sorry, 1991. My bad.
Oh, 1990. Okay, yeah. Well, yeah.
1991. The album was released. So it was a concert in London. It's it's a stadium concert. And I didn't really know much about INXS except I liked them, and there's three brothers in the band. Maybe that's part of the fraternity that made it better. And of course, he ended up with a disastrous life afterwards. But this seemed to be a band at the height of their fame that was still enjoying that fame. That Michael Hutchins is probably one of the greatest frontmen I've ever seen, although he clearly is channeling some other people at times, be it Jim Morrison or Mick Jagger or whatever. But I don't think that, my wife was noting that, and I'm like, I don't know if you can, be a rock performer and not be influenced by those people, or just how many moves are there up on stage? How many moves like Jagger are there? But the whole concert was, I only didn't recognize two songs, and those songs were every bit as good as the hits. For a short period of time, that band was really cranking out some fairly unique and great material.
Yeah, they really managed to blend like some heavy funk and R&B with rock music. I saw them at the Uptown in 1985. Their first two records, one's called Shaboos Dubah, amazing. It's got the Don't Change is on there, probably one of the greatest rock anthems ever. And then they put out a record called The Swing, which is one of my perfect records. It's flawless. It flows perfectly. Not a bad song. And so I saw them on that tour at the Uptown, and yes, they were from the start. They hit the stage at 100 miles an hour and never slowed down, and it was just boundless energy. So, it went by fast because there was so much to absorb, and you got swept up in the energy and their mood. And one of the best live bands I've ever seen, and I still play their music a lot, especially those early records. The second time I saw them, they played Spirit Fest, sorry, in 1998. So that was September. That was always Labor Day weekend, I believe. And Dylan had played that the night before. B.B. King had played. It was a great lineup, and INXS played, and that was September. It was one of their last shows because he died 2 months later.
Right, and it's a Wembley Stadium, and the crowd is just it goes mad. And I think, I don't know if it's the encore or the last song is Devil Inside, and just a thumping, unbelievable showstopper. I mean, I can't more highly recommend this particular thing, and you just forget about the tragedy to follow and enjoy. It's always one of my number one things about any show is how much fun is the band having. And if they are, it really helps me out a lot.
Right. And it's also when at the end of the show or towards the end of the show, when the band stops and applauds the audience, they all showing gratitude for how enthusiastic and energized the audience was. For those shows, I've seen bands that I don't really, whose music I don't care for, do that. And it's one of those communal moments that is really it can be almost spine tingling. Like, this worked, both sides fulfilled their obligation. The crowd showed up and was ready, and the band delivered, and everyone's going home happy.
Well, you delivered again, and we had a blast again, and I always appreciate it, and I think I'll say it every time until it happens. I look forward to doing this face-to-face real soon, and Tim, thanks a lot.
Okay, Danny.
This podcast was made possible by our great sponsors like Easton Roofing, the presenting sponsor of Kansas City Profiles at the Danny Kling Scale Reasonably Irreverent podcast. Easton Roofing, where integrity matters. We hope you enjoyed the latest Danny Kling Scale Reasonably Irreverent podcast. Come back soon for something fresh and new.